I was the golden child in my family, and it ruined my relationship with my siblings. I didn't realize it until I've been struggling with whether or not I should share this story, but after all these years of silence, I think it's time. I know the term golden child is usually used to describe someone who's given everything, who lives in the lap of privilege and love, while their siblings suffer in the background. That's what I was, the golden child in my family. But what I want to talk about isn't the privilege, but the loneliness and pain that came with it. I never asked for this role, and by the time I realized what was happening, it was already too late. This is the story of how I lost my siblings, the people I wanted to be closest to, and how I learned the devastating truth that changed everything. I still haven't come to terms with it, but maybe writing this out will help. I grew up in what seemed like a pretty average family. My parents weren't rich, but we were comfortable. I had 3 sisters, Leah, the oldest, May, the middle child, and Alice, who was the closest to me in age, just a year apart. From the outside, we looked like a picture-perfect family. We went on vacations, my parents came to our school events, and we never wanted for anything. But underneath all of that, there was a quiet storm brewing that I didn't even realize existed until it was too late. Looking back now, the signs were always there. My parents treated me differently, but I was too young and naive to understand why. I was their special girl. I was always praised for everything I did, every little accomplishment, every good grade, every compliment I received from a teacher. They'd shower me with attention, while my sisters were left in the shadows. It wasn't just praise, either. I was always the one who got the biggest birthday parties, the best gifts, and the most affection. At the time, I didn't understand why this upset my sisters. I thought I was just lucky, or that maybe they didn't care about those things. But the truth was, I was the golden child, and my parents were using me to push them away. I just didn't know it yet. Leah, being the oldest, was the first to start pulling away. She was 5 years older than me, and I always looked up to her as the cool, older sister. She was smart, artistic, and seemed to have everything together. I remember being in awe of her when I was little, following her around like a shadow, begging her to play with me or show me her drawings. But as I got older, Leah grew distant. She started spending more and more time locked away in her room or out with her friends. She never wanted to be around the family, especially at dinners or during holidays. I thought she just didn't like me anymore, but I didn't understand why. It wasn't until one summer, when I was about 10, that the truth finally came out. We were at a family barbecue, and everything seemed fine until Leah snapped. My parents were, as usual, praising me for something small, some achievement at school, and completely ignoring the fact that Leah had just won an art competition. I was oblivious, smiling and basking in their attention, when I noticed Leah standing off to the side, her fists clenched, her face flushed with anger. "Do you ever get tired of it?" she suddenly yelled, startling everyone around us. "Do you ever get tired of them fawning over you like you're the only one that matters?" I was shocked. I had no idea what she meant. "Leah, don't speak to your sister like that," my mom said sharply, glaring at her. "You're just being dramatic." But Leah didn't back down. She turned to me, tears in her eyes, and said, "You've always been their favorite. They don't care about the rest of us, just you. And you don't even see it." I didn't know how to respond. My parents quickly ushered Leah inside, and the barbecue continued like nothing had happened. But that moment stuck with me. It was the first time I realized that my relationship with my sisters was more complicated than I thought. Leah left for college soon after that, and our relationship never recovered. I tried reaching out to her over the years, but she always kept me at arm's length. It hurt, but I didn't understand why she resented me so much. May was different from Leah. She wasn't the type to lash out or make a scene. Instead, she dealt with her pain in silence. May was always the quiet one, the one who got lost in the middle. While I got all the attention for being the special child and Leah was celebrated for her achievements when our parents remembered to, May was overlooked. She was always there, in the background, quietly taking in everything. I tried to be close to May, but she always kept me at a distance. Whenever I'd invite her to do things with me, she'd decline or make excuses. She'd spend most of her time reading or hanging out with her friends, and I'd often find her deep in thought, as if she was carrying a weight I couldn't see. One day, when I was about 14, I overheard May talking to one of her friends. She didn't know I was listening, but her words pierced through me like a dagger. "It's always about her," she said bitterly. "Mom and Dad don't care about me or what I do. It's always about how great she is, how proud they are of her. I could disappear tomorrow, and they wouldn't even notice." Hearing that broke my heart. I never wanted May to feel that way, but I didn't know how to fix it. Every time I tried to reach out to her, to show her I cared, she'd pull away. It was like a wall had been built between us, and no matter what I did, I couldn't break through. Eventually, I stopped trying as hard, and like Leah, she became someone I barely knew. It was like losing a sister, but we still lived under the same roof. Out of all my siblings, Alice was the one I was closest to. We were only a year apart, and for the first part of our childhood, we were inseparable. We did everything together, played, laughed, and even had the same group of friends. Alice was my best friend, the one person who I thought understood me completely. But as we got older, even our bond started to fray. It wasn't immediate, like with Leah and May, but it was there, slowly growing like a crack in the foundation of our relationship. Alice started becoming more reserved around me, more hesitant. I noticed that whenever our parents praised me, she'd smile, but it never reached her eyes. I could sense that something was wrong, but I didn't know how to talk to her about it. The breaking point came when we were both 16. It was my birthday, and my parents had gone all out, throwing a lavish party with all my friends, expensive gifts, and more attention than I knew what to do with. Alice was there, of course, but she was quiet, sitting off to the side and barely participating. Later that night, when the party was over and everyone had gone home, I found her sitting in her room, staring out the window. "What's wrong?" I asked, sitting down next to her. She didn't answer for a long time. Finally, she turned to me, her eyes filled with sadness. "Why do they love you more than me?" she whispered. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I didn't know what to say. I had never wanted to be the favorite, never asked for the attention or the praise. But hearing it from Alice, my closest sister, the one I thought I had a real connection with, made me realize just how deep the divide had grown between us. "I don't know," I whispered back. "I don't know why they treat me differently." Alice didn't say anything else, but the damage was done. From that day on, our relationship was never the same. We grew apart, slowly but surely, until we were just two people living in the same house, sharing memories that felt like they belonged to someone else. For years, I lived in a state of confusion and guilt. I didn't understand why my parents treated me the way they did, and I didn't understand why my sisters resented me so much. I wanted so badly to fix things, to have the close-knit family I had always dreamed of, but it felt like every attempt I made just pushed my siblings further away. It wasn't until I was 17 that I finally learned the truth. One night, I overheard my parents talking in their room. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but their voices carried through the thin walls, and I couldn't help but listen. "She's almost 18, my mom said, her voice strained. "We need to tell her the truth before she leaves for college." "No," my dad replied sharply. "We can't. It'll destroy her." I froze. What were they talking about? "She deserves to know," my mom insisted. "She's not our daughter. She's Paul's." My heart stopped. Paul was my dad's brother. He had died in a car accident when I was a baby. I barely remembered him, but I knew he had been close with my parents. "Paul and his wife died when she was just a baby," my mom continued. "We took her in, raised her as our own. But she's not ours, and she deserves to know." I couldn't listen anymore. I stumbled back to my room, my mind racing. I wasn't their daughter. I was Paul's daughter. That's why they had treated me differently, why they had always given me special treatment. They were trying to compensate for the fact that I wasn't really theirs. Everything suddenly made sense. The way my sisters had always been pushed aside, the way my parents had lavished attention on me, it was all because I wasn't their child. They had taken me in out of guilt, out of a sense of responsibility to my dead parents. And in doing so, they had ruined my relationship with my sisters. After learning the truth, I felt like my entire world had been turned upside down. I didn't know who I was anymore, or where I fit in. The family I had grown up with, the people I had loved and looked up to, weren't really my family. And the siblings I had longed to be close to had been pushed away because of something that wasn't even my fault. I felt trapped, suffocated by the weight of the secret I now carried. I couldn't stay in that house any longer. I couldn't pretend that everything was okay when it clearly wasn't. So, I made a plan. I decided that as soon as I turned 18, I would leave. I would pack my things, take whatever money I had saved up, and disappear. I didn't know where I would go, but I knew I couldn't stay. Before I left, though, I wanted to make things right with my sisters. I knew I couldn't fix the years of hurt and resentment, but I wanted them to know that I had never meant to take anything from them. I wanted them to know that I had loved them, even if I hadn't shown it in the right ways. I wrote each of them a letter, apologizing for the way things had turned out and explaining that I was leaving. I didn't tell them about the truth. I had learned I wasn't ready for that, but I hoped that someday, they would understand. I left in the early hours of the morning, slipping out of the house while everyone was still asleep. I left the letters on their pillows, hoping that when they found them, they would understand why I had to go. For weeks, I stayed with a friend, trying to figure out what to do next. My phone buzzed constantly with messages and calls from my parents and sisters, all of them begging me to come home. But I couldn't. Not yet. Eventually, I heard from Alice. She told me that they had all known about the truth, that I wasn't really their sister, but they had never said anything because they felt sorry for me. They knew I had lost my real parents, and they didn't want to hurt me even more by telling me the truth. That revelation was almost as painful as learning the truth in the first place. They had known all along, and yet they had let me live in ignorance, let me believe that I was the one causing all the problems. I didn't know whether to be angry or grateful. After I left, my family started going to therapy. My parents finally acknowledged the mistakes they had made, the way they had treated me differently and pushed my sisters away. They wanted to fix things, to rebuild the relationships that had been broken. Alice kept me updated, telling me how therapy was going and how everyone was trying to change. She told me that they all missed me and wanted me to come home, that they were ready to start over and make things right. But I wasn't sure if I was ready. The wounds were still too fresh, the pain too raw. I didn't know if I could ever fully trust them again, if I could ever go back to being a part of a family that had been built on lies. As I sit here writing this, I'm still not sure what to do. My family wants me to come home, to give them a chance to fix things. And a part of me wants that too. I miss my sisters, and I miss the idea of having a family that loves me. But I'm also scared. Scared that things won't really change, that the past will always be there, hanging over us like a dark cloud. I don't know if I can go back to that house and pretend that everything is okay. So, for now, I'm staying away. I'm taking time to heal, to figure out who I am outside of my role as the golden child. Maybe one day I'll be ready to go back. But until then, I'm trying to find peace in the knowledge that I survived. That I made it through the pain and the loneliness, and that I'm still standing. Thanks for listening. It feels good to finally get this off my chest.